Lieutenant Commander Jessica Phoenix Martinez had always been the best pilot in her squadron, but she never expected her own commanding officer to sabotage her career out of pure jealousy. Captain Bradley Henderson had been gunning for her since the day she outperformed him in a training exercise. And now, he was about to learn that crossing a woman who earned her call sign by rising from the ashes was a mistake he'd regret for the rest of his military career. Jessica stood in the briefing room, watching the radar screens show four F-18 Super Hornets in perfect diamond formation. Her wingmen trusted her completely, and she had never given them reason to doubt that trust. The mission was routine reconnaissance over the Pacific, but something felt different today. Captain Henderson's smirk during the pre-flight briefing had set her nerves on edge. He'd been unusually interested in her flight path, asking detailed questions about her route and timing that seemed excessive for a standard patrol. The formation climbed through 20,000 feet, engines humming in perfect synchronization. Jessica's hands moved automatically across the controls, her muscle memory guiding the aircraft with precision that came from years of training. She'd been flying since she was 18, worked her way up through the ranks despite constant obstacles thrown in her path by men who believed women had no place in fighter jets. Every promotion had been earned through blood, sweat, and proving herself twice as capable as her male counterparts. "Phoenix Lead, this is Tower," the radio crackled. "We're showing an anomaly in your navigation system. Please confirm your position." Jessica frowned, checking her instruments. Everything appeared normal. "Tower, this is Phoenix Lead. All systems showing green. Position confirmed at coordinates previously transmitted." But something was wrong. The horizon looked different than it should have, and her GPS was showing readings that didn't match her compass. She'd been flying long enough to trust her instincts, and right now they were screaming that she was being set up. Henderson had access to the navigation systems, and he'd been acting strange all week. The pieces were starting to fall into place. Her wingman, Lieutenant Danny "Rocket" Thompson, came over the radio. "Phoenix, you seeing what I'm seeing on the nav display?" "Copy that, Rocket. Something's not right here." The formation began to drift as confusion spread through the flight. Jessica's heart rate spiked as she realized they were being deliberately led off course. This wasn't just equipment failure. This was sabotage. Henderson had finally found his chance to make her look incompetent, to discredit her in front of the entire squadron. But he'd made one crucial mistake. He'd underestimated exactly how far she was willing to go to protect her reputation and her career. The next few minutes would determine not just the outcome of this mission, but the trajectory of both their futures. Jessica's grip tightened on the controls as she prepared to turn the tables on the man who thought he could destroy her. The hunter was about to become the hunted, and Captain Henderson had no idea What kind of storm was brewing behind those aviator sunglasses? Jessica's training kicked in as she assessed the situation. The navigation anomaly wasn't random. It was too precise, too targeted. Someone had deliberately corrupted their flight data, and she had a strong suspicion about who was responsible. Captain Henderson had been unusually insistent about personally overseeing the pre-flight systems check, something he'd never done before. The man who had been trying to undermine her career for months had finally made his move. Phoenix Lead, this is Tower. You are approaching restricted airspace. Adjust heading immediately. That confirmed it. They were being deliberately guided toward a zone that would result in a serious violation, one that would end her career and possibly result in criminal charges. Henderson's plan was diabolical in its simplicity. Make it look like she had led her formation into restricted airspace through incompetence, then use the incident to have her grounded permanently. Jessica's mind raced through her options. She could follow the corrupted navigation data and face the consequences, or she could trust her instincts and take control of the situation. The choice was clear. She'd spent too many years fighting for her place in the cockpit to let Henderson destroy everything she'd worked for. Phoenix Flight, this is Phoenix Lead. We have a navigation emergency. All aircraft switch to backup navigation systems immediately and form up on me. Her wingmen responded without hesitation, their trust in her absolute. They'd flown together for 2 years, and they knew she'd never put them in danger. As the formation tightened around her aircraft, Jessica felt the familiar calm that came over her in crisis situations. This was where she thrived, where her skills shone brightest. The restricted airspace warning continued to blare, but Jessica was already calculating a new course. She pulled up the backup navigation system and cross-referenced it with her compass and visual landmarks. The discrepancy was enormous. They were nearly 50 miles off their intended course, heading directly toward a classified military installation. Tower, this is Phoenix Lead. We have evidence of deliberate navigation system tampering, requesting immediate investigation and declaring an emergency. The silence that followed was deafening. Jessica had just accused someone of sabotage, a serious charge that would trigger a full investigation. But she was past caring about protocol. Henderson had forced her hand, and now she was going to make sure he faced the consequences of his actions. Her hands moved across the controls with practiced efficiency, bringing the formation back on course. The other pilots followed her lead without question, their faith in her skills unwavering. This was why she'd earned her call sign, like a phoenix rising from the ashes. She always found a way to overcome the obstacles placed in her path. As the formation leveled out on the correct heading, Jessica's mind was already working on the next phase of her plan. Henderson thought he was clever, but he'd left a trail that she intended to follow all the way back to him. The game was far from over. The investigation began the moment they touched down. Jessica had meticulously documented every aspect of the navigation failure, including timestamps and system readings that would prove the tampering had occurred. She'd also managed to record the radio transmissions that showed the deliberate misdirection, creating an evidence trail that would be impossible to ignore. Captain Henderson met them on the tarmac, his expression carefully neutral. "Rough flight, Martinez." "Nothing I couldn't handle, sir." Jessica's voice was steady, giving nothing away. She'd learned long ago not to show weakness in front of predators. "Good thing you caught that navigation error. Could have been serious." Jessica studied his face, looking for any sign of guilt or satisfaction. Henderson was good at hiding his emotions, but she caught the slight tightening around his eyes. He was nervous, which meant he knew his sabotage had been discovered. "Yes, sir. Very fortunate. I've requested a full investigation into the system failure." Now Henderson's composure cracked slightly. "Investigation for a simple equipment malfunction. The failure patterns suggest deliberate tampering, sir. The investigation team will want to examine all the pre-flight procedures and access logs." Jessica kept her voice professional, but her message was clear. She knew what he'd done, and she wasn't going to let him get away with it. The next few hours were a blur of debriefings, technical inspections, and witness statements. Jessica's wingmen corroborated her account of the navigation anomaly, and the technical team found clear evidence of unauthorized access to the navigation systems. The digital fingerprints led directly back to Henderson's access codes. By evening, Henderson was in custody, facing charges of sabotage and endangering military personnel. Jessica stood in the squadron ready room, watching through the window as military police escorted her former commanding officer away in handcuffs. The satisfaction was overwhelming, but she kept her expression neutral. This was just the beginning. Lieutenant Colonel Sarah Davidson, the new acting squadron commander, approached Jessica with a file in her hand. "Outstanding work today, Martinez. Your quick thinking prevented a disaster." "Thank you, ma'am. Just doing my job." "Your job description doesn't include exposing corruption in the chain of command. That took courage." Jessica nodded, accepting the praise. She'd learned that in the military, timing was everything. Today had been the perfect opportunity to take down Henderson, and she'd seized it without hesitation. The phoenix had risen from the ashes once again. The court-martial proceedings began 3 weeks later. Jessica had been preparing for this moment, gathering evidence and building her case with the thoroughness of a seasoned prosecutor. Henderson had underestimated her intelligence and her determination, and now he was going to pay the price for his arrogance. The courtroom was packed with military personnel, including several high-ranking officers who had come to witness the downfall of a once respected captain. Jessica sat in the witness section, her uniform immaculate, her bearing confident. She'd been called to testify about the events of that day, and she was ready to tell her story. Henderson's defense attorney tried to paint the incident as a simple equipment malfunction, but Jessica's testimony was devastating. She methodically walked through the evidence, explaining how the navigation system had been deliberately compromised and how Henderson's access codes had been used to implement the sabotage. Lieutenant Commander Martinez, the prosecutor asked, "In your professional opinion, could this have been an accident?" "No, sir. The specific nature of the tampering required detailed knowledge of our navigation systems and deliberate intent to cause the aircraft to deviate from their assigned course. This was not a random malfunction." Henderson's face remained impassive, but Jessica could see the defeat in his eyes. He knew the evidence was overwhelming, and his military career was over. The man who had tried to destroy her reputation was now facing the complete destruction of his own. The prosecutor continued, "What would have happened if you hadn't caught the navigation error?" "We would have violated restricted airspace, potentially triggering a national security incident. My career would have been destroyed, and my wingmen would have faced serious disciplinary action through no fault of their own." Jessica's voice remained steady, but inside she was burning with anger. Henderson had been willing to sacrifice 3 innocent pilots to satisfy his personal vendetta against her. The man was a coward and a disgrace to the uniform. The verdict came 3 days later, guilty on all charges. Henderson was sentenced to 10 years in military prison and dismissal from the service. His military pension was forfeit, and he would carry the disgrace of his actions for the rest of his life. Jessica stood outside the courthouse, breathing in the fresh air of vindication. She'd not only survived Henderson's attempt to destroy her career, but she'd turned the tables and destroyed his instead. The phoenix had risen from the ashes, stronger than ever. The aftermath of the court-martial brought unexpected opportunities. Jessica's handling of the crisis had impressed the senior leadership, and she found herself being considered for advancement opportunities that had previously been denied to her. The investigation had also uncovered a pattern of discrimination and harassment within the squadron, leading to broader reforms. Lieutenant Colonel Davidson called Jessica into her office a week after the verdict. "Martinez, I have some news that I think you'll find interesting." "Yes, ma'am." "You've been selected for the Navy's elite test pilot program. It's a career-defining opportunity." Jessica felt her heart skip a beat. The test pilot program was the pinnacle of naval aviation, a chance to fly the most advanced aircraft in the world and help shape the future of military aviation. It was an opportunity that Henderson had actively blocked in the past. "Thank you, ma'am. I won't let you down." "I know you won't. You've proven that you can handle anything that comes your way." As Jessica left the office, she reflected on the journey that had brought her to this moment. Henderson's attempt to destroy her career had backfired spectacularly, not only failing to achieve his goal but actually accelerating her advancement. Sometimes the best revenge was simply refusing to be defeated. The test pilot program was everything Jessica had hoped for and more. Flying experimental aircraft pushed her skills to the limit, and she thrived in the challenging environment. Her reputation as a skilled and reliable pilot grew, and she began to receive offers for positions that would have been unthinkable just months earlier. 6 months into the program, Jessica was selected to lead a classified project involving next-generation fighter aircraft. The irony wasn't lost on her. While Henderson was sitting in a prison cell, she was flying missions that he could only dream about. The career he'd tried to destroy was now soaring to heights he'd never achieved. The classified project involved testing revolutionary new aviation technology that would reshape aerial combat. Jessica found herself working with the brightest minds in aerospace engineering, pushing the boundaries of what was possible in military aviation. Every successful test flight was another step forward in her career, and another nail in Henderson's coffin of regret. One evening, as she was reviewing flight data from the day's test, Jessica received an unexpected visitor. Lieutenant Danny Thompson, her former wingman, had tracked her down to the testing facility. "Phoenix, I had to come see you. Word is you're doing incredible things out here." "Just doing my job, Rocket. How's the squadron?" "Different without you. Better, actually. Davidson's cleaned house and the whole culture has changed. What you did exposing Henderson, it made a real difference." Jessica smiled, feeling a deep satisfaction that went beyond personal vindication. Her actions had not only saved her own career, but had improved conditions for everyone in the squadron. The Phoenix had risen from the ashes and brought positive change with her. The conversation with Danny reminded Jessica of how far she'd come. A year ago, she'd been fighting for her survival in a hostile environment, constantly defending herself against Henderson's attacks. Now, she was a respected test pilot working on projects that would shape the future of military aviation. But the best revenge was yet to come. Jessica had been keeping track of Henderson's situation through official channels, and she knew that his downfall was complete. The man who had once held her career in his hands was now a convicted felon, stripped of his rank and his dignity. As she prepared for another day of test flights, Jessica reflected on the lessons she'd learned. Henderson had taught her that success was the best revenge, but he'd also shown her the importance of being prepared for those who would try to tear you down. The phoenix had learned to rise from the ashes, and she would never be vulnerable to predators like Henderson again. The classified project reached a major milestone when Jessica successfully completed the first manned test flight of a revolutionary new fighter design. The aircraft incorporated stealth technology, advanced avionics, and maneuverability that surpassed anything currently in service. Her successful test flight was a triumph not just for the program, but for her personally. Standing on the tarmac after the flight, Jessica looked up at the experimental aircraft and felt a surge of pride. This was what Henderson had tried to take from her, the chance to make history, to push the boundaries of what was possible. His jealousy and hatred had cost him everything, while her determination and skill had elevated her to heights he'd never reach. The test flight data was classified, but Jessica knew that her successful completion of the mission would be noted in her service record. Every achievement was another step up the ladder, another vindication of her abilities. The woman Henderson had tried to destroy was now writing her name in the history books of military aviation. News of Jessica's success reached the highest levels of the Navy. She was invited to brief senior leadership on the project, an opportunity that would have been impossible under Henderson's command. As she stood before admirals and generals, presenting the results of her test flights, Jessica felt the full weight of her vindication. "Outstanding work, Lieutenant Commander," Admiral Robert Chen said after her presentation. "Your test flights have exceeded all expectations." "Thank you, sir. It's an honor to be part of this program. I have a feeling this won't be the last time we'll be hearing about your achievements." Jessica left the briefing room knowing that her career was on a trajectory that Henderson could never have imagined. The man who had tried to ground her was now watching from prison as she soared to unprecedented heights. The irony was delicious, and Jessica savored every moment of it. The success of the test program led to Jessica being offered a position as lead test pilot for the Navy's next-generation fighter program. It was a role that would make her one of the most important figures in military aviation, with the authority to shape the future of aerial combat. As she reviewed the offer in her quarters, Jessica thought about the journey that had brought her here. Henderson's sabotage had been intended to end her career, but it had instead catalyzed her rise to greatness. Every obstacle he'd placed in her path had only made her stronger, more determined to succeed. The position came with a promotion to full commander, a rank that Jessica had once thought would take years to achieve. Now she was being fast-tracked through the ranks, her exceptional performance and leadership qualities recognized by the highest levels of command. Jessica accepted the position without hesitation. As she signed the paperwork, she couldn't help but think about Henderson, languishing in his prison cell while she prepared to take on one of the most prestigious roles in military aviation. The Phoenix had not only risen from the ashes but had become a force that would shape the future of the skis. The new position brought Jessica into contact with defense contractors, aerospace engineers, and military strategists from around the world. She found herself at the center of discussions about the future of air warfare, her opinions valued, and her expertise sought after by industry leaders. During one particularly important meeting with defense contractors, Jessica was asked to provide input on the design specifications for the next generation of fighter aircraft. Her recommendations, based on her extensive test flight experience, would influence the development of aircraft that would serve for decades to come. As she outlined her vision for future fighter design, Jessica felt the full weight of her position. She was no longer just a pilot fighting for her place in the cockpit. She was a leader shaping the future of military aviation. Henderson's attempt to destroy her had backfired so completely that she was now in a position to influence the very systems he'd once controlled. The meeting concluded with Jessica being invited to join the steering committee for the next generation fighter program, a position that would give her unprecedented influence over military aviation policy. It was an honor that few pilots ever achieved, and Jessica accepted with the knowledge that she'd earned it through skill, determination, and the ability to overcome any obstacle. That evening, Jessica called her parents to share the good news. Her father, a retired Air Force colonel, was particularly proud of her achievements. "You've come so far, sweetheart. I always knew you had it in you." "Thanks, Dad. It's been quite a journey." "That business with Henderson, I'm sorry you had to go through that, but look what you've accomplished. You've turned his attempt to destroy you into the foundation of your greatest success." Jessica smiled, feeling the truth of his words. Henderson's sabotage had been a catalyst, forcing her to prove herself in ways that had ultimately accelerated her career. The Phoenix had indeed risen from the ashes, stronger and more magnificent than ever before. Commander Jessica Martinez stood before the assembled pilots of the new elite test squadron, her silver wings gleaming in the morning sun. As the squadron commander, she was responsible for training the next generation of test pilots, passing on the skills and knowledge that would keep America's air superiority intact. "Ladies and gentlemen," she began, her voice carrying the authority of experience, "you are here because you represent the best of naval aviation. Your mission is to push the boundaries of what's possible in the skis." Looking out at the eager faces, Jessica saw herself as she had been years earlier, determined, skilled, and ready to prove herself. But these pilots would benefit from her leadership, learning from someone who had overcome every obstacle and emerged victorious. The squadron's first mission was to test the latest generation of experimental aircraft, incorporating the design recommendations Jessica had developed during her time as lead test pilot. Flying these aircraft would be the culmination of her professional journey, leading her own squadron in missions that would define the future of aerial warfare. As the pilots dispersed to prepare for their first training flight, Jessica felt a deep satisfaction. She had not only overcome Henderson's sabotage, but had transformed it into the foundation of an exceptional career. The woman he had tried to destroy was now in a position to shape the future of military aviation. The training program Jessica developed became the gold standard for test pilot instruction. Her methods, based on her extensive experience and hard-won wisdom, produced pilots who were exceptionally skilled and resilient. The program's success enhanced her reputation even further, establishing her as one of the premier aviation leaders in the military. During one particularly challenging training exercise, Jessica found herself thinking about Henderson. While she was training the next generation of America's finest pilots, he was serving his sentence in military prison. The contrast was stark and satisfying. The predator had become the prey, while his intended victim had become the hunter. The exercise involved testing the limits of the new aircraft in extreme conditions. Jessica led the formation through a series of maneuvers that pushed both pilot and machine to their breaking points. Her own skills, honed through years of experience and adversity, were on full display as she demonstrated techniques that few pilots could master. As the formation returned to base, Jessica reflected on the journey that had brought her here. Every challenge Henderson had thrown at her had made her stronger, more skilled, and more determined. His attempt to destroy her had instead forged her into the exceptional leader she had become. The success of Jessica's squadron caught the attention of the Pentagon, and she was invited to brief the Joint Chiefs of Staff on the future of military aviation. Standing before the highest levels of military leadership, Jessica presented her vision for the next generation of air warfare. The aircraft we're developing today will determine America's air superiority for the next 50 years, she explained, her presentation backed by extensive flight test data. Our pilots will face challenges we can barely imagine, and we must prepare them with the best training and equipment possible. The Joint Chiefs were impressed by her insight and expertise. General Patricia Williams, the Air Force Chief of Staff, approached Jessica after the briefing. "Commander Martinez, I've been following your career with great interest. Your work in test pilot training has been exceptional." "Thank you, General. It's been an honor to serve. I'd like to discuss some opportunities that might interest you. We're looking for leaders who can shape the future of military aviation. Jessica felt a thrill of anticipation. The opportunities being offered were beyond anything she could have imagined when she was fighting Henderson's sabotage. The Phoenix had risen so high that she was now soaring among the eagles of military leadership. The opportunity General Williams presented was extraordinary. Command of the newly formed Joint Aviation Development Center, a position that would make Jessica responsible for coordinating aviation development across all branches of the military. It was a role that would place her at the pinnacle of military aviation leadership. "This is a new position," General Williams explained, "created to ensure that our aviation programs are coordinated and efficient. We need someone with your experience and vision to make it work." Jessica accepted the position immediately. As she reviewed the scope of her new responsibilities, she marveled at the turn her career had taken. Henderson's sabotage had been intended to end her military service, but it had instead catapulted her to the highest levels of aviation leadership. The Joint Aviation Development Center was headquartered in a state-of-the-art facility that brought together the best minds in military aviation. Jessica found herself working with engineers, strategists, and pilots from all branches of the military, coordinating programs that would shape the future of American air power. Her first major initiative was the development of a unified training program for test pilots across all services. Drawing on her experience with her own squadron, Jessica designed a curriculum that would produce pilots capable of handling any aircraft in the American arsenal. The program was a resounding success, with pilots from the Air Force, Navy, Marines, and Army all benefiting from Jessica's innovative training methods. Her reputation as a leader and innovator spread throughout the military, and she found herself consulted on aviation matters at the highest levels of government. As Jessica established herself in her new role, she occasionally thought about Henderson. While she was shaping the future of American aviation, he was serving his sentence in obscurity. The man who had tried to destroy her career was now a forgotten footnote, while she was writing the next chapter in the history of military aviation. The irony was not lost on her. Henderson's jealousy and hatred had set in motion a chain of events that elevated her far beyond anything he had ever achieved. His attempt to ground the Phoenix had instead taught her to soar higher than ever before. Jessica's success at the Joint Aviation Development Center led to her being promoted to Rear Admiral, making her one of the youngest flag officers in the Navy. The promotion ceremony was attended by senior leadership from all branches of the military, acknowledging her contributions to American aviation. Standing before the assembled officers, Jessica felt the weight of her achievements. She had overcome every obstacle, defeated every enemy, and risen to heights that few could imagine. The woman Henderson had tried to destroy was now wearing the stars of a flag officer. Admiral Sarah Chen, the chief of naval operations, pinned the new insignia on Jessica's uniform. Rear Admiral Martinez, your service to this nation has been exceptional. Your leadership in aviation development has strengthened our military and enhanced our national security. Thank you, Admiral. It's been an honor to serve. I have a feeling this is just the beginning. The Navy has big plans for you. Jessica smiled, knowing that her journey was far from over. The phoenix had risen from the ashes and was now soaring at altitudes that Henderson could never have imagined. The best revenge had indeed been living well, and Jessica was living extraordinarily well. The promotion to Rear Admiral opened doors that Jessica had never dreamed possible. She was invited to join the Defense Science Board, advising the Secretary of Defense on matters of technology and innovation. Her opinions carried weight in the highest circles of government, and her recommendations shaped policy at the national level. During her first Defense Science Board meeting, Jessica presented her vision for the future of military aviation. Her presentation, based on years of experience and countless hours of flight testing, outlined a comprehensive strategy for maintaining American air superiority in an evolving global landscape. The challenges we face today are unprecedented, she told the assembled board members. Our adversaries are developing new technologies and tactics that threaten our traditional advantages. We must innovate faster and more effectively than ever before. The Secretary of Defense, James Morrison, was particularly impressed by her insights. Admiral Martinez, your experience gives you a unique perspective on these issues. I'd like you to chair a special committee on aviation innovation. Jessica accepted the role with enthusiasm. As she looked around the room at the other board members, she reflected on the journey that had brought her here. Henderson's sabotage had been intended to end her career before it truly began, but it had instead launched her on a trajectory that led to the highest levels of influence. The Special Committee on Aviation Innovation became one of the most important bodies in the Department of Defense. Under Jessica's leadership, it developed strategies that would guide American aviation development for decades to come. Her vision and expertise shaped policies that would affect millions of military personnel and billions of dollars in defense spending. As the committee's work progressed, Jessica found herself briefing the president on matters of national security. Standing in the Oval Office, presenting her recommendations to the commander-in-chief, she felt the full weight of her position and the distance she had traveled from that day when Henderson had tried to destroy her. The president, a former Navy pilot himself, was particularly interested in Jessica's insights. Admiral Martinez, your work has been invaluable to our national security. The innovations you've championed have kept America ahead of our adversaries. Thank you, Mr. President. It's been an honor to serve. I understand you've overcome some significant challenges in your career. That resilience has served our country well. Jessica smiled, thinking about Henderson and the obstacles he had tried to place in her path. Every challenge had made her stronger. Every setback had taught her valuable lessons. The phoenix had risen from the ashes and was now soaring at the highest levels of American leadership. Years passed, and Jessica's influence continued to grow. She was promoted to vice admiral, then to full admiral, becoming one of the most senior officers in the Navy. Her expertise in aviation was recognized worldwide, and she was invited to speak at international conferences on military technology and strategy. During one such conference in London, Jessica was approached by a journalist who asked about her remarkable career trajectory. Admiral Martinez, you've achieved unprecedented success in military aviation. What drives you to excel? Jessica considered the question carefully. I believe that every obstacle is an opportunity to grow stronger. The challenges I've faced have taught me that resilience and determination can overcome any adversary. She didn't mention Henderson by name, but his shadow was implicit in her words. The man who had tried to destroy her had instead become the catalyst for her greatest achievements. The phoenix had learned to rise from any ashes, and that lesson had carried her to the pinnacle of military leadership. The journalist pressed further. There are rumors that you faced sabotage early in your career. How did that experience shape your leadership style? I learned that predators exist in every organization, Jessica replied. The key is to be prepared, to document everything, and to never let them see you as vulnerable. When someone tries to destroy you, the best response is to become stronger than they ever imagined possible. The interview was published in major newspapers around the world, cementing Jessica's reputation as one of the most formidable leaders in military aviation. Her story became an inspiration to countless young officers who faced their own challenges and obstacles. As Jessica returned to her duties at the Pentagon, she reflected on the conversation with the journalist. Henderson's attempt to destroy her had become the foundation of her greatest success. The phoenix had not only risen from the ashes, but had become a beacon of hope for others facing similar challenges. Admiral Jessica Martinez stood at the podium of the Naval War College, delivering the keynote address to a graduating class of future naval officers. Her uniform bore the insignia of her high rank, and her chest was decorated with ribbons representing a career of exceptional achievement. Ladies and gentlemen, she began, her voice carrying the authority of experience. You are about to embark on careers that will test your courage, your skills, and your character. You will face adversaries who seek to destroy you, obstacles that seem impossible to overcome, and moments when failure appears certain. She paused, looking out at the eager faces of the young officers. But I'm here to tell you that every challenge is an opportunity to prove your worth. Every enemy who tries to tear you down is giving you the chance to show how strong you really are. The audience was captivated by her words. Jessica's reputation as a leader who had overcome incredible obstacles was well known throughout the military, and her insights were eagerly sought by the next generation of officers. In my career, I've learned that the best revenge against those who try to destroy you is to become everything they feared you could be. Rise from the ashes of their attacks and soar higher than they ever imagined possible. The speech was met with thunderous applause. As Jessica left the podium, she felt a deep satisfaction. She had not only overcome Henderson's sabotage, but had transformed it into wisdom that would guide future generations of military leaders. The final chapter of Jessica's revenge was written not in Henderson's destruction, but in her own extraordinary success. While he remained in prison, forgotten by the world, she had become one of the most influential leaders in military aviation. The Phoenix had risen from the ashes and had become a legend. In her private moments, Jessica sometimes wondered about Henderson. His jealousy and hatred had set in motion a chain of events that elevated her far beyond anything he had ever achieved. In trying to destroy her, he had instead created a leader who would shape the future of military aviation for decades to come. The irony was complete. Henderson's legacy would be one of failure and disgrace, while Jessica's would be one of innovation, leadership, and triumph over adversity. The Phoenix had not only risen from the ashes, but had become a force that would inspire others to overcome their own challenges. As Admiral Jessica Martinez looked out from her office window at the Pentagon, watching aircraft training in the distance, she felt a profound sense of accomplishment. Her journey from a young pilot fighting for respect to one of the most senior officers in the military had been extraordinary. Every obstacle had been overcome, every enemy defeated, and every challenge transformed into an opportunity for growth. The woman Henderson had tried to destroy had become a legend, and the Phoenix had risen to heights that her tormentor could never have imagined. The best revenge had indeed been living well, and Jessica Martinez was living extraordinarily well. The final irony came when Jessica was selected to serve as the Chief of Naval Operations, the highest position in the Navy. As she was sworn in, she thought about the journey that had brought her here. Henderson's sabotage had been intended to end her career, but it had instead launched her on a trajectory that led to the pinnacle of naval leadership. Standing before the assembled officers, Jessica felt the weight of her new responsibilities. As CNO, she would be responsible for the entire Navy, including the aviation programs that had been her life's work. The Phoenix had risen from the ashes and had become the most powerful leader in naval aviation. In her first speech as CNO, Jessica spoke about the importance of resilience and determination. "We will face challenges that test our resolve," she told the assembled officers. "But we will overcome them, just as we have overcome every obstacle in our path. The Navy's greatest strength is not our ships or our aircraft, but our people and their determination to succeed." The speech was a subtle reference to her own journey, a reminder that even the most devastating attacks could be overcome with skill, determination, and the will to rise from the ashes. Jessica's story had become part of naval folklore, inspiring countless young officers to persevere in the face of adversity. As she settled into her new role, Jessica reflected on the complete transformation of her life. Henderson's jealousy and hatred had set in motion a chain of events that elevated her to the highest levels of military leadership. The man who had tried to destroy her had instead become the architect of her greatest success. The Phoenix had risen from the ashes and had become a legend. Jessica Martinez, the woman who had once been targeted for destruction, was now one of the most powerful leaders in the American military. Her story would be told for generations, inspiring others to overcome their own challenges and rise to greatness. And somewhere in a prison cell, Bradley Henderson continued to serve his sentence, forgotten by the world while the woman he had tried to destroy soared at heights he could never have imagined. The Phoenix had risen from the ashes, and her flight would continue to inspire others long after her own journey was complete.